just want to tell whoever is listening to this that anything is possible. We can do it. It's all in our head.
The real race in a mile starts with the third lap. You have to run that third lap, the 400-meter track, as hard as you would run that last lap.
Hello and welcome into the first installment of the Running for Coverage podcast. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to connect with us here. I'm Cole Pepper, and we've got a lot coming up for you here on this first installment, and we'll tell you about that in just a second. But first, I want to kind of set the stage for what I'm hoping this podcast will do and be over the coming weeks. As you may have seen on social media, or if you're signed up for our newsletter, I really want this to be a meeting place, a virtual meeting place for the local running community, something that can tie everybody together. We have such a large running community, but also spread out over a large area geographically in Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia, that I'm hoping this will be a place where people can kind of commune virtually, experience some of the things, and learn some things as well. We have some of the best coaches in the area who are going to contribute some of their wisdom, including later today on this podcast. We'll hear from Keith Brantly, the 1996 Olympic marathoner and former Florida Gator great. We'll have some tips for him on running a different distance than most of you probably are running, and we'll have a good reason for that as well. We're also going to be highlighting some of the top runners and top stories in running in our area. Sometimes it'll be about a top runner like we have today with Oliver Ernest, who's just had a remarkable last year and a half, running all 6 of the world's major marathons all in the same year. Remarkable. He and his wife been able to do that is beyond me. We'll ask him how he was able to pull it off. Train, run, travel, and have a job and a life. That's pretty impressive. We have that coming up. But sometimes we're going to be talking to mid-pack runners or people who are just starting because listen, it's hard to get to that point where you're an elite runner. And coming from my perspective, where I have never and will never be an elite runner, I compete against myself. I just try to get better and to try to find ways to improve and put more time in and, chase that PR or chase that longest run, whatever it might be. So we're going to have people from all across sort of the spectrum of the Jacksonville running community joining us here. And occasionally, if they have a Jacksonville connection, we'll try to get some of the top international runners on, Emily Sisson, for instance, or Todd Williams, somebody who has great river run history. We'll work on those as well. Every week as well, we will also have a gear review where this is a great opportunity for you to be a part of it, where you can tell us and the rest of the listeners what piece of running gear you just love. I'll let you be an advocate for it. This is not Consumer Reports. It's sort of your own stamp of approval on this, something that other runners may find to be valuable or help them make a decision on what they're going to buy, whatever it may be, whether it's a pair of shoes or wearable tech or clothing, what have you, sunglasses, whatever it might be. And we'll also touch on nutrition as well as we continue on. So let's get started here. We mentioned what we have coming up, but first, let's take a look back at this past weekend's races in town and look ahead to what's coming up. This past weekend, there were 3 notable 5Ks that went on. One is the Hula Hustle, 330 finishers in that one. Troy Winkler, 18 years old, 16:47 his time, first across the line. And Julio Rodriguez, 19 years old. So on the men's side, it was the young guys. On the women, it was the veterans. Betsy Dale, 21:50. And Sabrina Minnie at 22:05 were the top finishers. In fact, the top 6 women were all 35 plus. So let's hear it for the veterans getting it done there. Also this past weekend, the Fernandina Beach Shrimp Festival 5K. There were 305 finishers in that race. And as I was compiling the list of winners there, I started seeing a name pop up quite a bit. Wesley Twiggs won it, 17:56. Brendan Twiggs was 9th at 20:53. Chris Twiggs was there on the leaders list. And the list of Twiggs just kept growing. And so I thought, well, what the heck's going on here? And you might know that Chris Twiggs is a Galloway man, heads up the Galloway group in Fernandina Beach. So he and his wife and his kids all ran in the race and did quite well. So congratulations to the Twigs. Also, Dave Faraday, who some of you will know, uh, one of the best senior runners out there, finished 11th at 66 years of age, 11th overall, won his age group, of course. Just very impressive. On the women's side, Lacey Watford, the former University Christian and UNF runner, just finishing up her freshman year at UNF, 1958 to win the women's 5K. And then the other race that was this past weekend, the Jacksonville Great Fire 5K, smaller race. It was downtown, as you might imagine, celebrating or noting the Great Fire in Jacksonville. And Salvador Camacho won. He's in his 50s and won it at 1857. So salute to you as a new member of the Club 5-0. I love to see that happening. And Amanda Napolitano, who's the executive director of the Donna Foundation, her first race win. She won it at 23:57, and she'll be busy coming up this weekend as well, because this coming weekend, the Donna 5K runs Saturday at 8 a.m. from the Black Knight headquarters in Riverside. It goes down Riverside, then takes a left on Water Street, then goes back across and comes back in, and you wind up running up the little switchback there near the Riverwalk, and then comes down the Riverwalk and underneath the bridge before the finish. And that also includes a virtual 5K option. So I know some people who ran the Great Fire 5K are applying that for the Donna 5K as well. Of course, part of the Donna Foundation and raising money for breast cancer research. And then the other thing that's coming up this weekend, one of my favorite races, I think this is probably my top 3 favorite races of the year. That is the Mile Championship that is held in Murray Hill. The PRS group hosts that, and the Big Chief Tire Mile Championship is a fantastic event. There are different categories and classifications. One of the reasons I love this so much is because they have a Clydesdale division. So I'm a bigger runner, and I love to compete in the Clydesdale division. Gives me a chance to podium. I've done it a couple of times, podium, including last year when I think we had 5 people running. One of them pulled out, the other one had a hamstring. But hey, I'll take it. I'll get it. There's also a chug relay for 21 plus at the end, where you have 4-person teams right there near Fishweir Brewery. You can figure out how that all goes down. But that starts at 4 p.m. with the 5K. That is the Fritz Parman Memorial 5K for the former head of Big Chief Tire and a great supporter of the running community and a great friend. And then so the Donna's 5Ks in the morning at 8 a.m. The Mile Championship 5Ks at 4, and then the mile itself starts at 5 with a different category. So a great weekend of running coming up straight ahead. All right. Want to remind you as well, before we hear from Oliver Ernest, that we want you to sign up for our newsletter. Every week we will put out a newsletter that will have some information, some additional content and interviews, as well as some more details on the upcoming races. And maybe most importantly, a chance for you to win prizes from our sponsors. This week, a Server's Heart cleaning service that I use at my house, one of our sponsors are offering a full house clean up to 2,500 square feet, and we will draw the name of one of the subscribers at the end of the month to win free house cleaning. Let me tell you, talk about saving time and taking some of the burden off, particularly if you have kids. They do a great job, and you'll have an opportunity to win that. So be sure to sign up. You can find our newsletter sign up on our social media. And if you can't find it, just shoot me a message however you can. There are all sorts of ways, including by email at runningforcoverage@gmail.com, and we'll get you signed up for that. All right, without further ado, let's take you to our interview with Oliver Ernest. Well, as we continue on here on this flagship edition, the first installment of Running for Coverage, I was thinking along the way of who should I get as the guest, the first guest for this new podcast. And I wanted to get somebody who was local and somebody who could really talk about overcoming tremendous odds and really accomplishing something in running. And it was a pretty easy choice, to be honest with you. Knowing what Oliver Ernest has done over the last year plus is just remarkable. The fact that he's been able to not only run all 6 of the world's major marathons, 7 straight when you include Boston you just ran. We'll talk to him about Boston too. But the training for it and actually living a life at the same time is pretty amazing. So, Oliver, thanks so much for joining us. What has this last year been like for you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's been great, a little bit hard, but it's been probably the best thing we could ever done. I never thought I was gonna do that so fast, to be honest with you. When I first did my first major was Berlin, and I was so happy that I was accepted to run Berlin. But I say, okay, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I will be finishing my last major. And no, it was 17 months.
Really,
to finish the
really
6 of them.
remarkable. Yeah. So I want to, we're going to get into sort of the travel aspect of this, but for those who don't know your story, let me go back to kind of the beginning of how you got involved in running in the first place.
Well, I'm part of a big family. We are 7 siblings, and I'm the youngest one. But my 4 older siblings are PE teachers. So when we were kids, I just remember that they say, okay, there's a race, let's go. And you're in, we sign you up. And I never trained, never did anything. So we just like go, wait for the start and run. But it was fun, doing that. And then eventually we all grew up and we did our lives separate. We took different ways, but you never forget what your siblings or your dad and mom initiate. So one day I said, okay, looks like I'm getting a little bit overweight. Yeah, I actually went to the doctor and she said like, yeah, you need to do a little bit more of exercise. So I said, okay, let's do it. And then my wife, Maricruz, she was already in one of the local clubs, so here running clubs. And then she said, why don't you start running with us? And then that was not too long ago, 2018. And then I said, okay, let me try. So I went and started running, and then I signed up for my first marathon, and that's how I'm here. Yeah, that's how I started.
Between 2018, when your doctor says, you're getting a little chunky, let's do something, and your first marathon, how long of a stretch was that?
Well, I think it was only like 6, 7 months. Yeah, it wasn't that long, but and to be honest with you, I haven't done any like professional training because I mean, like you said earlier, we have lives and we have families and we work. We don't live of running. This is something that we love to do, but on our extra time. So I didn't really train a lot for the marathon, and I went ahead and did it. So it was great. And then I said, maybe, well, when you are in the middle of the marathon, you said, this is my last one. I will never do that again. Yeah. And then 1 hour, 2 hours after you finish, you are like already looking for the next one. Like, what's next? Yeah.
It gets into your blood. So, all right. So after that first marathon, did you start thinking, all right, I need to do some real training? Or was it, I mean, the fact that you didn't really do any serious training and could run a marathon is pretty remarkable to begin with. So what does your training look like, leading up to, say, the last year?
Well, after that marathon, after my first one, I really start thinking, yeah, it's better if you train a little bit. So I think I could do better. I could finish maybe faster or finish more strong than dying,
Yeah.
So I said, okay, it's time to do that. So I talked to my coach and I told him, okay, what should I do if I want to improve this and that? And then he told me a few things. One of those was nutrition as well, because I my first marathon, I never knew anything about that. I just went and say I can do it. And didn't know what gels or electrolytes or anything like that was. So he started talking to me and pay attention to what he said, and I started like doing a little bit more of training. And I signed up for my second one, and it was better. I felt better when I finished that one, and then continued to looking for better times, and finally one day they said, okay, it's time to see who qualified for one of the mayors. And then I said, okay, let me try. So I submit my times and everything, and boom, I was there. I was so happy. I didn't even know what a major was.
What was that first major?
That was Boston.
That was Boston. There are 6 majors in the marathon world, 3 of them in the United States and 3 overseas. Boston, Chicago, New York here in the U.S., and then London, Berlin, and Tokyo internationally. So, in whatever order you want to take them in, give me what the environment is like at each of these major marathons. Let's finish with Boston, but if you want to start anywhere else, tell me what the experience is like for you, more so than necessarily how you run or how you ran, but give people a little insight into those trips you take.
Yeah, well, speaking about the trip, it's a little bit tricky to run a marathon when it's far away and different time zone, because it can affect you a lot if you don't have the proper time to be there, earlier. So some of the international marathons that I did, we actually left 2 days before the race, 3 days before the race, and those were a little bit tough, a little bit hard. Tokyo, it's beautiful. I mean, the city and the people, it's amazing, but you have to be very careful when you go to Tokyo because of the time zone. I mean, it's 14 hours different. So I still remember that it was just a few months ago, but I remember the night before the race. It was 8 p.m. and I said, okay, it's time to go to bed, but I wasn't sleepy at all.
Right.
Yeah. And then you try and everything is try to put everything dark and try to sleep. Then 1 a.m. I was up. I was up and hungry because it's kind of like lunchtime here, So I said, okay, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to eat. And then went to bed like around 4 a.m. And then I woke up, get ready. And then I said, okay, I'm ready. Took a shower, tried to wake up. 9 a.m. when the race starts, I was so sleepy. So I said, okay, we'll see what happened. But the goal was to finish it. It was my 6th major. And I said, I have to finish this one. And it was great. It was great. But yeah, you want to talk about each one of them. And I started with Tokyo. It's great. It's beautiful. A lot of people out there, but they're a little bit quiet. They're quieter than the Americans or the people from, for example, the people from London. They are loud, and that helps you a lot. That pushes you, yeah.
Get a little extra energy along the course.
Exactly, yeah. They are very, very loud. They never stop helping you during the course, So people always ask me, what is your favorite one of all of the 6 marathons? I think most of us as humans, we are gonna go for the one that we did the best, but that's not the case. I've been reconsidering everything, and I think I'm gonna leave a little bit on the side my times and think about the environment, the people, and everything. So it's really between London and Boston that I will say they're my favorite ones. The people is really, really nice here in Boston. And then the course, I love that course. I love hills. I love running hills, and flat is a little bit hard for me. So I will say for me personally, London and Boston are the best ones. London is great. Again, the time you have to really be there, maybe a week or 2 weeks before the race to try to get used to the time zone, and the jet lag. It will hit you really hard as well. And then Chicago is a beautiful, beautiful race as well. It's probably the most flat, which is not really good for me, but for most of the runners, they love running on flat courses. And then I will say New York, it's a beautiful race. I want to do it again. I didn't really enjoy New York the way I wanted it, and I'm gonna tell you this in this podcast. It's the night before the race. I was already in bed at 11 p.m. when my sister called me that my mom had a stroke. So I wasn't gonna run it. I had some really good friends of me staying in the same hotel, and they said, "Well, there is not much you can do. Go ahead and run it." So I did run the race, but the whole race, my mind was somewhere else. It was just praying and trying to finish that race as fast as I could to fly and go see my mom. So, but New York, it's definitely a good marathon to do, and it's a little bit hilly. That's the one I like, but you have to be 100% focused on the race if you want to enjoy it and do good. Berlin, it's beautiful. Again, remember I told you sometimes we describe the races based on how we did it. Well, Berlin is great. It's beautiful, but it was almost 90 degrees when I did it. So it was tough, but considering that it was my first international marathon, I will say it's great. It's beautiful. Again, the people is great over there. Not as loud as the people in London and Boston, but they are there and they are there to support you and everything. A very good organized race and an excellent course. I love that course. The views, all the sites that you run through, they're beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
All right, now, and you've just run Boston. For those who are watching the video version of this, Oliver's got his new Boston shirt on and proudly displaying it, of course. You mentioned earlier that this is the premier marathon of the world. It is the top. You get a different sense standing there at the start line, waiting to get started, surrounded by other people who've come from all over the country and all over the world, about the significance of that, and does it have a different feel at the start before you get going?
Yes. There's a different feeling than the other ones. One is because the course is tricky. You have to be very smart to run Boston. So, for example, you go to another marathon and you know that it's going to be hard from mile 1, because of the course is going like uphill or something like that. But Boston, the first half of the marathon, it's easy, if I can say that, because downhill, So, but you have to be smart. Don't take those downhills like the whole race is going to be like that. And then the second part is hard. So that feeling makes you like, give you a motivation, because you're going to be easy running for the first half mile. You're really going to enjoy it. So, and not only the feeling of the course, but the feeling of that you are part of the oldest marathon in the world, 127 years, and the most prestigious race in the world and the hardest to get in. Well, here in the United States, because Tokyo is really, really hard, but Boston is also very, very hard to get in. So once you are there, the first time I ran Boston, I said, "Oh, I don't think I will ever feel this again," when I was at the starting line. And I've been doing it 3 years in a row, and every year is the same. You feel feeling, yeah.
And this
great.
year there was a huge contingent from Jacksonville, well over 100 local runners ran, and Paul McRae was organizing this whole trip for his sort of celebrate his 50th birthday and the whole bit. When you have that when you have your friends and teammates there, that has to really make for a special race as well.
Yes, it does. And then also before the race, when you have all these people that you know that you've been training with them here, you have a lot of motivation to start and finish that race. You are in the middle of the race. I probably was able to catch up with like 20 of them, and then they were behind me, and then they catch me up, or I was behind them, and then I noticed, oh, that's a shirt from Jacksonville. I know that guy, and I know his shirt, and I get close to him and try to help them, try to tell them, let's go, we can do this, we got this. So it was a great experience. I never ever had an experience like this one, where I can see so many of my friends running the same marathon.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I want to ask you about your training and how you fit it all in. With a job, obviously you and your wife can run together a bit, but you're balancing, life and job and still training for these elite marathons. How do you do it?
Well, that's a good question. Just if somebody is watching this podcast and is trying to do a marathon, it's not as hard as the training. Yeah, the training is really hard, and when you have a family, and when you are not professional, and you have a coach that is giving you a full schedule like you are a professional, you have to try to make some time. And then the day has 24 hours, but you want to rest as well. Okay, but sometimes you have to wake up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. and training. I am not a person that train too much, to be honest with you. I know friends of me that they train 60, 75 miles a week. If I do that, I don't think I can do a marathon, because I'll be sore by the day of the marathon. So my training is like 35, 45 miles a week. But even like that, based on the work that I do, it's a little bit hard. Not only because of all the training, most of the marathons are in fall or the beginning of the year. So that means that for us living in Florida, we have to do our training during the summer, which is really tough. It's really hard. But it is hard, but we can do it. I mean, I think we don't have to put limits in our head. We can do anything we want as long as we say yes, we can. And this is what I've been doing through all those years.
Positive self-reinforcement there has made a big difference for you. So what's next now? What does the next 6 or 8 months look like for you?
Well, I wasn't planning to do a lot of things after those big majors that I finished, and I said, well, this is my graduation. Now I'm gonna take it easy. And once you are in this, it's hard to get out of it. So I was talking to a few friends and my wife, and we just signed up last week for the third fastest course in the world, which is Valencia, Spain, December 3rd. Yeah. So a little bit more of a break, 1 or 2 more weeks, and then we start training for Valencia, which is a great race as far as I heard, and great weather because it's 45, 50 degrees down there.
Which will be much better than 90 degrees in Berlin. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, correct.
Oliver, thanks so much for coming on. I was so excited to get you on here to talk for this first installment of the Running for Coverage podcast. And I know a lot of folks who are listening to this probably know you or have followed you, but I hope that there'll be a little wisdom that folks can have pulled from what you have done. Just hats off to you. Just a great accomplishment. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And anytime we are here, and I just want to tell whoever is listening to this, that anything is possible. We can do it. It's all in our head. And once you said, I can do this, I have a friend actually. I wanted to you about him. He's in Los Angeles, and he just followed me on Facebook. And then one day, do a marathon, and then he signed up for his marathon. I helped him a little bit, telling him what to do. Okay, long story short, he just finished his fourth major in London after a year and a half. So if he can do it, anybody can do it.
That's remarkable. Great stuff. Oliver, thanks so much.
Take care. Have a good one.
All right, coming up, we are going to have our gear review. Kati Lou Johnston will be giving her gear review for us, and Keith Brantly joins us for a training tip and how to approach the mile if you're used to running 5Ks and 10Ks and half marathons. Some good mental coaching coming up here on Running for Coverage. A reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, as well as subscribing to the newsletter. The two different things to subscribe to. And again, that newsletter gives you an opportunity to win prizes from our sponsors throughout the course of the month. All right, time now for our gear review. And we bring in Kati Lou Johnston, who just ran her first Boston Marathon. She said she was so emotional when she crossed the finish line. It was an amazing moment for her. Here is her gear review for you.
Hi, I'm Kati Lou Johnston. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm an avid runner here in the PRS running community, and I run for the PRS race team. The gear that I love to run with, or I wouldn't run without, are the Nike Air Zoom Tempo Next Percent. I first used them at a 5K time trial, and I got PR'd and finally got sub 23. And that was a couple years ago. And from then on, I've had a lot of confidence in myself and in the shoe. I've made a lot of gains and felt like the return and recovery of the shoe makes running feel really smooth, which I like. It makes me feel excited and kind of jazzed about running. It would be perfect, or these shoes would be perfect for people who like a shoe that hug your feet. The top portion of the shoe is very durable and flexible, and that it kind of does exactly that, like hug your feet. It's not overly cushioned, and they're not overly hard either. So they're really comfortable and responsive. I get about 500 miles per pair, so they're a good everyday trainer. I will say that the inside of the shoe near the ball of your foot sometimes tends to separate from the bottom portion of the shoe. So I've had to glue them several times, but I love them so much that I have shoe glue on deck, as well as a couple pairs still in boxes. They did stop making the shoe for women, so I've been ordering men's sizes. So hopefully Nike starts to make them again. But yes, they're a very reliable shoe, and I definitely wouldn't run without them.
All right, as we continue on here, one of the things we're going to be doing on this podcast every week is tapping into some of the expertise of some of the best local running coaches in our area. And I can think of nobody better to start this off with than my friend and Gate River Run broadcast partner for the last 5 years, the 1996 U.S. Olympic marathoner and Gator great, Keith Brantly, who, I mean, the amount of running knowledge that he has and that I am able to pull out as I talk with him is just amazing. I always love talking. So Keith, thanks for joining us. And here we go. We're coming up on the mile championship this weekend, which is a different kind of race than we usually see. It's one of my favorite events of the year.
Mine too.
Maybe because there's a Clydesdale division, so I'm into it. I've finished third a couple of times
Awesome.
in small fields. So let's talk about if people are sitting here and they're usually training for 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, what have you. What can you do physically and mentally to get ready for running the mile?
Well, the mile is for most of us a sprint, right? And there's a lot of respiration going on, especially after about the first half mile, as you probably remember. It burns in your lungs and in your legs. the prep for a mile isn't too dissimilar for the prep for a 5K. However, most people who are prepping for 5Ks are actually training for half marathons, things like that. So, in the end, I think you have to look at it from the perspective, okay, how can I prepare for this without getting injured? And what kind of workouts can I do? And really, it's breaking that workout or that race up in segments. And if you want to try to, let's say, break 6 minutes for that mile, you're going to have to incrementally add in pieces of that distance. So you start with a 200 in 45 seconds. Okay, that it's just like how to eat an elephant. One bite at a time. And that's exactly what you do with this. And then you add incrementally over time. Now, if you're trying to do this a week out, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, truth be told, this is probably not the right time to be doing this segment, but this is the first podcast and this is the next race. So we got to talk about it because you do have to, train physically. So let's say that somebody now is they've been running 5Ks or 10Ks, maybe training for a half marathon they have on the calendar for a couple of months away, what have you. But they're running this mile championship. How about the mental approach? What should you do standing there at the start line? For me, as a mid-pack at best runner, the starting line for something like this, I have a terrible time trying to keep it under control and not turning it into a 100-meter sprint at the start.
Well, and that's where I think what you have to do is before the start of the race, after you got to get a good warm up in, probably more than what you would warm up for a 5K. So if you normally warm up a mile for a 5K, do 2 miles for the mile. Okay, you want to get yourself really ready. But I think most importantly is that prior to the race, you want to do some strides that kind of mimic the pace you want your goal pace for the half. Or for the mile. So you want to be able to, get a sense of what that pace is, because when the gun goes off, when everybody's lined up, everybody's nervous, they're doing strides and things like that, they're jumping up and down, and the gun goes off and boom, and they will never finish at that pace they run this first 100 in. Nobody does, right? So what you need to do is have some control and know that those people are going to come back to you, at least some of them, right? And don't get dragged out in that pace, because you will be in a world of hurt after the first half mile. You really will, especially if you've not been training at that pace. So mentally, you have to kind of think, you have to hold yourself back and don't be tempted to go up fast.
Always the toughest thing to do in a race like
this. It is. I mean, I often say, that, it is probably that self-control in that first 200 or 300 meters is one of the hardest things to overcome. Yeah. And that can even be a 5K too.
Well, and it's especially pointed here because you're going to have some folks running at particular paces that if they think, hey, I can go out and think about my first mile in a 5K and think about, okay, if I'm running that in, let's just say 7 minutes for the sake of argument, hey, I can push that to 6:50 or 6:40 or 6:15, maybe something like that. And all of a sudden,
all of a sudden it gets way out of control. And I think, the mental prep for it is just, okay, don't let me get sucked out sprinting out. That is just the worst thing you possibly can do. And then, one thing I think that most people don't really execute well on, and myself included, is they always say the real race in a mile starts with the third lap. You have to run that third lap, of a 400-meter track as hard as you would run that last lap. And the reason why is that because typically, we start to hit the wall after about 2 to 3 minutes of hard running. And if by pushing that third lap, mentally you're staying engaged, you may not be able to keep the same pace, but your loss is somewhat mitigated. Okay, because you're going to slow down on that 1200 part, right after the half, between the half and with 400 to go. Everybody's excited with 400 to go. That's easy, okay? But where we start to drop off mentally is that third lap. And it's just important to stay engaged, keep pushing as hard as you possibly can.
Great advice, Keith. Thanks a lot. We look forward to talking to you here on the podcast in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great stuff from the Olympic marathoner. As somebody once said, once an Olympian, always an Olympian, and once a marathoner, always a marathoner. So no former there in Keith's title, for sure. All right. That'll do it for us on this installment, the first installment of Running for Coverage. Thanks so much for joining us. Do want to remind you to sign up for the newsletter and to subscribe to this podcast and help us build this out. Send it to your running friends. If you found this to be informative or entertaining, or hey, just a good way to maybe pass the time while you're training, put it in your earbuds and go. Share it with your other running friends so we can grow this community and continue to connect this growing community as well. Thanks so much for listening to Running for Coverage. Have a great day, everybody.